Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Better Work Days, the podcast where we talk about simple skills and concepts and strategies that anybody can apply to create better work days. This week, very improvisational episode. Now, every episode has a bit of an improvisational nature because I like to work, I'm the type of public speaker. I like to work with an outline, kind of know the main points I want to hit, maybe have a few jokes in mind. But other than that, I don't work off a script. I just have bullet points and kind of I've got the roadmap ahead of me. This episode is even more so improvisational because the idea just came to me as I was wheeling this whiteboard you can see behind me into my office. And if you are not watching on the stream, allow me to paint you a picture. There's my glorious image is always in front of you. And then behind me, it's not the usual background. It's a big giant whiteboard. And on that whiteboard are a ton of yellow sticky notes with some text written on them in big black marker, and they're placed under different categories. The categories are ridiculous, policy, enforcement, applicable, usage, and those all pertain to a recent brainstorming exercise that we ran in one of our workshops at Real Custom Training. So we have our Level Up Leadership program. The third level, called Learning to Lead, is for anyone who is beginning to lead groups in their career. So that level covers things like managing conflict amongst people, running meetings, brainstorming and problem solving. And in the brainstorming and problem solving workshop, we actually have the participants run the brainstorming session themselves. I basically present a very basic problem solving model to them, part of which involves a brainstorming session. And then we go over formal rules for brainstorming so that you make sure it is run efficiently and with a purpose, and that it doesn't take over your meeting and that people don't let it go awry. And let me show you an image of what it looks like when we do this in our workshop. So here's I just put this is a LinkedIn post I made. There's me taking a selfie, and behind me, there's the classroom full of local professionals. These folks are frontline leaders, supervisors, managers. Some of them are emerging leaders. They're going to be supervisors soon enough, so their companies are proactively investing in them. But as you can see in this picture, I mean, yeah, that's technically me teaching a workshop, but I'm not doing much. I'm smiling, taking pictures. They are doing all the work. That is them working with the results of their brainstorming session that they also ran and facilitated themselves. Now, here's the part, and maybe I should start with this part in these episodes, but here's the part that may be helpful to you. All these notes behind me, that brainstorming session was on the topic of how might we manage cell phone distractions in our organization? Because my participants have reported, not just in that workshop, in pretty much every workshop, this is, I'm sure, close to true. I'm sure there's probably a few exceptions to this, but in nearly every workshop I've ever run in the past 4 years at Real Custom Training, the topic of cell phone distraction has come up. So I know across industries, across companies, across regions, it is an issue that is commonplace in the workforce in 2025. So we thought, well, that'd be a really good topic for the problem solving model and the brainstorming exercise. So everybody went through it, came up with their ideas of how we might curb or manage cell phone distraction in the workplace. And what I want to do is talk to you about a little bit of the brainstorming process, kind of a follow-up to our recent episode about brainstorming. But most importantly, I want to tell you the results of this problem-solving exercise. I want to tell you the top 3 or 4 ideas that this group generated on how to best manage cell phone distraction in their organizations. I'm going to give you their recommendations, and I'm going to give you some insight from my perspective as a facilitator of what I think are some big insights and takeaways for you from the ideas that this group generated. And again, big credit to these folks. I hope they don't mind me kind of using material that they generated in our workshop for this episode. In the future, I would, here's a little facilitator insight. I'd like to get their permission to do this. I'd like to do this type of thing with them knowing from the jump that we're going to use it as part of content on Better Work Days. And the idea there, actually, this might be a good episode for this, a good title for this episode. That type of program where our learners are actively helping us generate real world based content so that we're presenting things on better work days that we know are relevant to people who are out there leading in the modern workforce. Something like that, we could call it ideas from the front line. Get some frontline individual contributors, leads, supervisors, managers. Let's get some frontline folks in and let's hear directly from them and then share their ideas with our audience. And even, like I said, offer our own perspective on it. So ideas from the front line. And in this episode of Ideas from the Front Line, we're looking at managing cell phone distraction in your organization. Now, we'll start with the brainstorming tips that I referenced. The biggest one here I want you to note is that all of these brainstorming items, so on each note is an idea for how we could manage or curtail cell phone distraction in the workplace. So when people had an idea, it got written down on the note and it got stuck up there. What I want you to take away from this, and I mentioned this in our recent episode, take note of the fact that they are all written on sticky notes. And that is a super important part. It is a facilitator's, one of the main tools in the toolbox, but you should be using it too. Even if you're not a professional facilitator, when you're running brainstorming with your team, you are in the facilitator role. So just like a pro facilitator, get some sticky notes. Make sure you're putting the ideas on sticky notes. Why is that so important? Well, because as you can see behind me, we've got their ideas categorized. So after they came up with all their ideas, we started moving them around on the whiteboard. And we said, you know what? Here's a category. Here's a theme we see. Ridiculous. These are some of the more ridiculous ideas for how we could curtail cell phone distraction. So let me grab a couple of these and I'll tell you some of the ridiculous ideas. All right, ridiculous ideas for managing cell phone distraction in your organization. You could blind everyone. Again, remember, this was a brainstorming session. There are no bad ideas. Hey, you could blind everyone. That certainly would cut down on cell phone usage. Ooh, no outside relationships. If none of your employees had a single relationship outside of your organization, then who the heck would they be texting during the day? They don't know anyone other than who they work with. They don't need to text them. They're right there. Get rid of outside relationships. Cell phone problem goes away. Pretty good, ridiculous idea. You could smash all phones. Certainly you could. I'm sure you want to at times. Destroy all phones. All right, bit of a redundancy, but so you can see some ridiculous ones. Now, you might be saying those are so stupid. Why are we even talking about these? In a brainstorming session, let me tell you something. You know who got that ridiculous ball rolling? This guy. Okay, I think I threw out there. I think blind everyone may have been mine. Now, the reason I did that is one, I'm a cheeky rascal. Two, in brainstorming, when you throw out the crazy idea like that, it gets people going and it really reinforces for them and it shows them that you mean it when you prompted them and said, there are no bad ideas. You can throw out anything. So then when you, the facilitator, throw out, hey, what if you blinded everybody? It's ridiculous, yes, but people have a laugh. It kind of gets them going. So it actually can be helpful to introduce the ridiculous and the absurd in a brainstorming session. Now, another policy you can see, or another category you can see, is policy. So they came up with some ideas that we said, these would be more organizational policy type of ideas. The organization would have to get behind these ideas rather than an action that you as a supervisor or frontline manager can take. So some of the policy ideas, what if every single day employees had to sign the cell phone policy? What if every single day, every employee had to make some type of conscious affirmation that they agree with the cell phone policy? That's one idea. Hey, here we go. Set clear expectations. I mean, that's good advice no matter what problem you're looking at in the workplace. Set clear expectations. Now, one issue I run into with that is a policy might set clear expectations, but it's the enforcement and it's the application that will actually ensure if those expectations are, this says set clear exceptions. I'm sorry, everybody. Andy, pay better attention. Set clear exceptions. Oh, it's okay. So I remember now. With that, they were saying one of the issues, if you were to take cell phones away, employees get very people get upset about this, and I understand why, because it's deeply personal. Um, if you've had a family member going through a health emergency, or just aging parent, there are many personal scenarios in which the idea of being unable to be accessible to our loved ones, that's kind of an unbearable thought. We can't imagine not being able to get in touch with them during these dire times. And so, I think it's easy for leaders to say, well, the quickest, perhaps easiest, and most effective policy would be just no phones in the building, no exceptions. You have to consider how extreme that policy would feel to an adult who does their job well, and wants to be able to check their text messages throughout the day at appropriate intervals, to say to them, no, you can't have your phone. People who fit that bill, and hopefully that's the majority of the people in your organization, and if not, you got bigger issues than the cell phone one. But hopefully, most people meet that criteria. So you got to remember, if you were to enact that strict policy, you may end up with some valuable employees who really feel that it is unfair to them that they can't be allowed to responsibly utilize a cell phone in the workplace. I would just say keep an eye and an ear out for that if you are considering a strict no cell phone policy. Now, we also had categories: usage, applicable, enforcement, and lastly, you can see up top here. Actually, let me do. Oh, this is cinematic. That's our first camera move in Better Workdays history. We've never adjusted the camera live like that. You can see up top. All right, we did a consensus exercise to vote on what the best ideas were, and let me tell you what the top ones were. At number 4, no pockets. No pockets. If people on the production floor had no pockets, where are they going to keep the cell phone? That could help. Number 3, which got 4 votes in the end. Okay. Number 3, that says survey employees. So one of the ideas that got a lot of support in the group was we should survey employees about their thoughts on cell phone usage, because as I was just talking about, when we talked about this topic in our workshop, it became very clear just how personal the cell phone issue could become to people. People had very strong feelings about it, and it became clear to the group this is one of those cases where the golden question needs to be considered. And the golden question, if you watch Better Workdays, the golden question is actually a couple of questions. It's, who does this impact, and have we heard from them? And I was very glad to see something like survey employees get support in the group, because that's something we've been emphasizing in the Level Up Leadership program, is who does this impact and have we heard from them? So yeah, no cell phone policy is going to impact your employees. Why not survey them about cell phones to get a sense of kind of the emotional landscape, what you might be dealing with and looking at if you were to outright ban cell phones? If you get that data from them, it may give you some ideas about, oh, well, what kind of clear exceptions could we set? 90% of our employees say they absolutely want and need to be accessible to their family members when they are on shift, and their cell phone enables them to do that. So maybe we can set a clear exception that if it's a communication with a family member, it's allowed. We could go all day thinking this through, but the point is, survey the employees, get a feel for how people think and feel about the topic before you roll the policy out. Who does this impact, and have we heard from them? The second most popular one, find someone else who already fixed this problem. That is one of my favorite solutions to anything. I always say, what does a home run look like? Who's done this and done it extremely well, and can I copy them? Don't borrow, steal, as I learned in film school. If there's a shot in a movie that you love, and if you listen to interviews with directors, they all do this all the time. They'll all say, oh, that shot, I pulled that directly from this movie. Oh, I first saw that in this movie. Don't borrow, steal. So if you find a company that has already fixed the problem of cell phone distraction, find out how they did it and try doing what they did. Find out who fixed it. And you can see up top, you might be able to notice there's a note about Boeing. As we were having this discussion, one of the people in the workshop was on her cell phone and then spoke up and said, it looks like Boeing has a good policy, and it involved litigation, but there may be some worthwhile evidence from Boeing about how to manage cell phone usage. And that right there was a great example of another thing you got to keep in mind with cell phone usage. I, as the facilitator, I could have looked over at that person when I saw her on her phone. I could have said, excuse me, could you put the phone away? I don't want you distracted while you're here in the workshop. I need you focused, paying attention. Just like at work, when you see an employee on a cell phone, you might say, they're clearly distracted and not paying attention. That person in my workshop, just like your employee might be, that person in my workshop was using the phone as a tool to contribute to the workshop experience. So I would have been doing the group a disfavor if I had said, oh, could you please put your phone away? If I had assumed it was a distraction. I never assume that. If I see someone on their phone in my workshop, I assume they have a very good reason to be on the phone. And it has yet to ever become an issue where it caused such a distraction that I had to address it with them. And so I have had people in manufacturing say to me, hey, if you see me and my employee on our phones, we're not watching YouTube. We're looking up a video of how to fix the issue with the machine that we're experiencing. They said it's a tool. And some of them have said, I don't like the idea of being told, no, you can't have that tool in your pocket when you're at work. So again, it's not the tool. It's not the tool. It's the usage of it. It's the individual usage of it. So you may not want to just ban cell phones outright. And then lastly, this is really interesting. Really interesting. The runaway #1 vote getter for ideas on how to curtail cell phone usage and distraction in your organization. I'm going to pull this one down to show you. Punish supervisors. Take note of that. Take note of that. Here's my explanation of why that got so many votes. What I have learned working with people over the last 4 years at Real Custom Training, I've learned everybody is always looking up. When you get asked to do a certain thing, behave a certain way, think a certain way, believe in certain things, all of which, that's your culture. But when you get asked those things, you look up. And when you look up, you are looking to see, are the people asking me to do this thing, to stay off my cell phone, are they staying off their cell phones? When I get told you have to wear your safety glasses at all times, you have to wear your hearing protection. When I see the supervisor or the manager who asked me to follow that policy or enforce that policy, when they come on the production floor, they don't put the glasses on, they don't have the hearing protection in. I am not saying this is fair, but I am saying this is the reality. People look up, and if they perceive that the expectation being set for them is not being set for the people above them who are handing that expectation down, then it undermines their willingness to meet that expectation. I'm not saying it's fair necessarily, and there may be times where, you want to say, well, it doesn't matter if they're doing it up there. I know it's the right thing to do, and I'm going to do it down at my level. Okay, but let me tell you this. Even the self-driven people that will behave that way, who will do the right thing regardless of whether anyone above them is doing the right thing as well. You will lose those people because after enough time of doing the right thing and looking up and not seeing anyone else doing it, they are going to start thinking to themselves, what would it be like to work somewhere where I'm not the pariah? I'm not the maverick, I'm not the black sheep because I'm doing things what I think is the right way. Why would I want to continue working here? What would it be like to work somewhere where I look up and everyone's doing that and I can learn from them how to be even better? You're going to lose those people. Now, punishing supervisors, I don't know. Personally, I run into I think we're very quick to go to punishment. But so I don't know if I really would support the notion of punishing supervisors. To me, the real takeaway there for me is, okay, I'm not going to worry about punishing supervisors. What I'm going to worry about is getting the message to supervisors that I just shared with you, which is that people want you to be punished if you don't follow the same rules that you are asking them to follow, especially when those rules do apply to you. There's no reason a supervisor or manager going on the production floor can't follow or shouldn't follow the same safety procedures that they are in charge of enforcing on that production floor. When you make yourself the exception to the rule, you are sending the message that that rule doesn't really matter, and you are undermining people's willingness to follow that rule and that expectation. Hence, punish supervisors. So I'm not saying we should be punishing supervisors. I'm saying if you're a supervisor and a manager, you need to be very aware that leading by example is not just a catchy saying, and it's what you really have to do. You have to lead by example because everybody is looking up to see if you're doing the things you're asking them to do. And I said earlier that this ties into culture, and that's basically because your culture is the things that you value in your organization. It's the rules of behavior and attitude. So if you're saying to your people, hey, we really value honesty here, we need everybody to demonstrate that every day, and they look up and they see that their supervisor is doing unethical things, lying to their boss, fudging the numbers on reports, then they're going to say, I don't know if we really value honesty at this place. Because look at this person's doing all this stuff, and I'm not the only one noticing it, but no one's doing anything about it. So yeah, I guess they tell us to value honesty, but I don't know if we really do here. You got to live it. You have to live it in the day-to-day. So much stuff with culture just ends up things that kind of get cooked up at an offsite retreat, and then they're not embedded and integrated into the day-to-day life for everybody in the organization. And when that happens, you can end up with people who say, yeah, we should be punishing supervisors. What they're really saying is the supervisors need to do a better job of leading by example and embodying the values and the expectations that they claim everyone in the organization should be embodying and acting out in their day-to-day work. If you're not doing that, people are going to say, punish supervisors. So with cell phone usage, supervisors need to keep that in mind. If there's a very good reason that your team may see you on the floor on your phone, even though you're asking them not to be on your phone, if you have that very good legitimate reason, communicate it to them. Fill that knowledge gap, because right now they're filling it themselves. They're assuming you're doing personal stuff like they would like to do, but maybe aren't allowed to do. If you have a valid reason, let them know. And if you have a valid reason, ask yourself, well, if I've got a valid reason, perhaps sometimes when I see them on their phones, they have a valid reason as well. The last lesson for this, for supervisors, because I've been talking to a lot of groups about cell phones recently, so I got one more for you, is you got to remember, if you let your team, if you have exceptions for your team on cell phone use, that makes it harder for other supervisors to enforce a no cell phone policy. Because not only do people look up, but people look around. So if your supervisor saying no cell phones, no exceptions, I don't ever want to see a cell phone in your hand, and then you're looking over and the person, who's working 8 feet away from you, but just happens to have another supervisor, if you see them and they're on their phone, you're going to say, well, why can't I be on mine? Now, the other supervisor might say, well, my employee's caught up on their work. As long as my employee's getting the work done, I don't care if they're on their cell phone. Okay, that's fair, but you have to consider the ramifications and the ripple effects that you are creating a circumstance where there's a visible exception to a rule being made, and other people in the organization are seeing it and thinking that exception should be made for them as well. That's just human nature. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's something to keep an eye out for and try to address proactively. You have to get your supervisors on the same page with cell phone policy and usage, whatever the policy is going to be, whatever idea you decide to roll with to manage cell phone distraction. You have to have cohesion and alignment on your supervisory team. Otherwise, everyone's going to be making their own exceptions, and the policy you cooked up is going to just be some words on a piece of paper. You have to get the supervisors on board, and they have to have a cohesive approach to managing cell phone usage in your organization. We've covered it. We've done it. I think we've solved the problem. Not really, but let me tell you this. You could solve the cell phone problem in just a few meetings. I mean, this group over the course of 3 hours, and that 3 hours included teaching the problem-solving model to them. And then they had about maybe half the time they were actually using the model and doing it. So in about 90 minutes, this group, with a simple problem-solving framework and some brainstorming training, they came up with a lot of great ideas for how they could manage cell phone distraction in their organization. It's just the beginning of the process. It's just giving you the best ideas to then pursue further. But just a few more meetings like that, where you're dedicated to this issue and you're talking to employees, you're talking to the people that your policy is going to impact, and you're factoring in their input. If you're doing all that, you could come up with some great solutions, I'm sure, for cell phone usage in your organization without dedicating a great deal of time to it. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing with me. We're about 30 minutes in. I marvel at my ability to just talk for 30 minutes. I know that's what some people hate most about me, but I don't think if you're listening, you're part of that category. So I appreciate you being here. And I mean that very much. The fact that anybody listens to this podcast, and the fact that I've had a few times people out in the community stop me to say, hey, I liked this episode, or hey, this was helpful, or hey, I bought this thing you recommended. That's crazy. I don't care if it's only 5 people. It's a few more than that. But even if it was 5 people, that's pretty wild. So I really do appreciate anybody that's been listening and watching Better Workdays. And I hope to bring you more stuff that is generated by and kind of representative of the people we're working with, the real life leaders, managers, supervisors, people that are out there in the workplace who are in charge of other people and who take that responsibility seriously. People who aren't too cool to care, who want to be the best bosses they can be. Love working with those people. They've got great ideas, and they're going to help us bring those ideas to you. All right. Thank you very much. This has been Better Workdays.